I want you to imagine something that sounds like a blessing but often becomes a test. You wake up one morning and your life has changed. Maybe one of your investments rose far more than you ever expected. Maybe a small business you built on the side suddenly became valuable. Maybe a relative left you an inheritance. Maybe, in the most unlikely version, you won the lottery. Most people think the problem is getting rich. That is not how I see it. Getting rich quickly is not the hard part if randomness, luck, risk, timing, or one very good decision suddenly lands on your side. The harder part is surviving what happens next, because sudden wealth does not just change the numbers in your account. It changes the system around you. It changes how other people see you. It changes how you see yourself. It changes the incentives of your friends, your family, your advisors, your spouse, your children, your enemies, and even strangers who did not know your name yesterday. And if you do not understand that system before the money arrives, the money can turn from an asset into a force that exposes every weak point in your life. I have seen a version of this pattern many times. People think money solves pressure. Sometimes it does. But sudden money also creates a new pressure that most people are not prepared for. When someone becomes wealthy quickly, they often become less private, less disciplined, less careful, and less anchored. They think the money has made them safer. In reality, the money has made them more visible. Visibility is not always power. Often visibility is risk. That is why the first principle is very simple. When you get rich, tell almost no one. I know that sounds severe. I know the instinct is to celebrate. You may want to tell your friends. You may want to show the people who doubted you. You may want to post something, buy something, move differently, dress differently, eat differently, speak differently. But that impulse is dangerous because it is driven by emotion at precisely the moment when you need principles. The moment sudden money arrives, privacy becomes your main asset. Not the house, not the car, not the watch, not the headline number, privacy. Because when people know you have money, they begin assigning claims to it in their minds. Some will do it politely, some will do it aggressively, some will disguise it as love, some will disguise it as opportunity, some will disguise it as emergency. But the pattern is the same. They start treating your wealth as if it belongs partly to them. This is why I believe in being what people sometimes call stealth rich. You have wealth, but you do not advertise it. You have options, but you do not turn them into a performance. You can help, but you do not become a public rescue fund. You can improve your life, but you do not make your new position easy for every opportunist to calculate. There is a famous example that explains this principle better than any abstract rule. Jack Whitaker won more than $300 million in the Powerball lottery in 2002. At the time, it was one of the largest jackpots ever won by a single ticket. He did not disappear quietly. He became public, he became known, he gave money to churches, he bought cars and houses for friends, he helped strangers who asked him for help. At first, that sounds generous. It sounds like a man with a big heart, and maybe it was. But generosity without structure often becomes destruction. His life did not become peaceful. It unraveled. His wife divorced him. Friendships broke apart. He was targeted again and again. And the tragedy around his family became part of the story. The lesson is not that helping people is bad. The lesson is that unstructured visibility attracts chaos. When you suddenly have money, you cannot operate with the same social rules you used before. The environment has changed. A person who was harmless when you were ordinary may become dangerous when you are rich. A request that sounded small before may become the opening move in a permanent dependency. A favor may become an expectation. A gift may become evidence that you can be pressured. Money does not always change people in the way people say. More often, money reveals people. It reveals who respects boundaries. It reveals who sees you as a person and who sees you as a source of liquidity. It reveals who can be happy for you without trying to extract from you. And it reveals whether you have the discipline to say no before saying yes becomes a habit. So in the first stage of sudden wealth, silence is not selfish. Silence is risk management. There is one person you should speak to very early, and that is a serious attorney who understands trusts, estates, privacy, asset protection, and taxes. Not the cheapest person, not a friend who does contracts, not someone who says, I can probably help. You need someone who has seen the pattern before. The right legal structure can save money, preserve privacy, reduce mistakes, and create barriers between your emotions and your assets. A trust can matter. Estate planning can matter. Beneficiary designations can matter. Tax planning can matter. The way you hold assets can matter. But the bigger point is that you need to put a system between your new wealth and your old impulses. That is what good structures do. They slow you down. They create rules. They make it harder to make a life-changing mistake in one emotional afternoon. Most people think the first question after sudden wealth is, what should I buy? That is the wrong question. The better question is, what structure will keep me from destroying this? Because if you skip structure, the spending decisions come too quickly. The second principle is to not stop being useful. A lot of people will tell you never to quit your job after sudden wealth. I do not think that is always right. If you are in a job that drains your life, humiliates you, makes you worse, or keeps you in a system that you no longer need, then leaving it may be rational. Money is supposed to increase freedom, but there is a big difference between quitting a bad job and quitting all responsibility. Do not confuse freedom with aimlessness. A person who stops working completely after sudden wealth often begins to orbit around consumption. They wake up with no real work, no real demands, no meaningful problems to solve, and too much financial capacity. That is a dangerous combination. Boredom plus money creates bad decisions. It creates businesses bought for entertainment. It creates restaurants opened by people who do not understand restaurants. It creates expensive hobbies that become identities. It creates friends who are around only because the spending is exciting. It creates substances, gambling, affairs, status games, and impulsive deals. People underestimate how important work is to psychological stability. Work does not have to mean being trapped in a job you hate. Work can mean building something, learning something, improving a craft, mentoring, creating, studying markets, running a family office properly, managing a foundation, or taking a position that gives your day shape. But you need a purpose that is not shopping. You need a life that does not make spending the main activity. For at least the first several months after sudden wealth, keep your life as normal as you reasonably can. Do not let the money force an identity change before your mind has adjusted to the facts. That period matters because sudden wealth creates a lag. Your account changes instantly, your habits do not. Your environment changes instantly, your judgment does not. Your options expand instantly, your character does not. So you need time to let your internal system catch up with your external reality. The mistake is assuming I am rich now, so the old rules no longer apply. The truth is the opposite. When you become rich, the rules matter more. You have more to protect, more to lose, and more ways to fool yourself. The third principle is to use the money to repair the weak links first. Most people want sudden wealth to become a symbol. They want the new house, the new car, the trip, the visible sign that life has changed. But if you are carrying high-interest debt, the most intelligent early move is not luxury. It is elimination. Credit card debt charging 20 or 30% is not just debt, it is a machine that eats your future. Paying it off is like earning that interest rate without risk. If you have personal loans with high rates, expensive car loans, or any obligation that compounds against you, remove it before you start thinking like an investor, because there is a simple principle in economics and life. Before you build the upside, stop the bleeding. A person can be rich on paper and fragile in reality if the liabilities are wrong. Sudden wealth gives you a chance to reset your balance sheet. Do not waste that chance. That does not mean every debt should be destroyed automatically. A low rate mortgage may be different. If you locked in debt at 2 or 3% and the terms are manageable, there can be a rational argument for keeping it and investing capital elsewhere. Debt is not morally good or bad. It is a tool. Its danger depends on cost, duration, purpose, and your behavior. High interest consumer debt is different. That debt does not help you own productive assets. It usually represents spending brought forward from the future. It compounds against you. It reduces flexibility. It keeps you psychologically tied to old patterns. So if sudden wealth arrives, I would look first at what obligations are creating unnecessary pressure. Clear the debt that is clearly destructive, then make a promise to yourself. Do not use wealth as permission to recreate the same trap at a larger scale. Because many people pay off credit cards and then slowly build them again. They upgrade their house, they upgrade their car, they upgrade their habits, they upgrade their social circle. And soon the wealth is not freedom anymore. It is just a bigger machine that requires bigger spending to maintain the new identity. The fourth principle is to be extremely careful with family and friends. This is one of the most emotionally difficult parts of wealth because the people closest to you can become the hardest to manage when you suddenly become rich. Many people will not say, "You are lucky, I am happy for you, and I respect your boundaries." They will say that in words perhaps, but underneath, they may feel something else. They may feel that you did not earn it. They may feel that you owe them because they knew you before. They may feel that your success creates an obligation to fix their problems. They may feel that if you can help them and do not, then you are selfish. That is where wealth becomes a social test. The fastest way to damage a relationship is often to lend money to someone close to you. A loan between relatives is rarely a loan in the economic sense. It becomes a test of loyalty, shame, pride, resentment, and memory. If they pay you back, the relationship may survive. If they do not, you become the person who has to decide whether to enforce the debt or pretend it does not matter. Either choice can poison the relationship. That is why I believe that if you help someone, you should be very clear whether it is a gift or not. If it is a gift, give only what you are willing to never see again. If it is not a gift, formalize it like a real transaction and understand that the relationship may change. But most of the time, for family and friends, the cleaner system is this. If someone has a genuine need and you decide to help once in a clearly bounded way, make it clear that this is not an ongoing emergency fund. Make it clear that they cannot build their financial plan around your willingness to rescue them. This is not cruelty. This is respect for reality. If you become the person who solves everyone's problems, you will not create stronger people around you. You will create dependence. You will create repeated requests. You will create resentment from those you help and from those you refuse. You will train people to see your money as a public utility. A good principle has to be kind over the long term, not merely pleasant in the moment. Saying yes may feel kind today and destructive next year. Saying no may feel harsh today and preserve the relationship over time. When people are in need, help can be good, but help without boundaries can become a system that harms both sides. That is why sudden wealth requires not only financial discipline, but emotional discipline. You need to tolerate disappointment from others. You need to survive being misunderstood. You need to let some people think you are less generous than you are because explaining your full financial situation would create even more risk. This is difficult, but it is necessary. The fifth principle is the most important financial principle in the entire situation. Do not spend the principal. Spend only what the principal produces. That sounds simple, but it is the dividing line between people who stay rich and people who tell stories about how they used to be rich. When money arrives suddenly, the consumer mind sees a pile. The investor mind sees a machine. The consumer asks, "What can this buy?" The investor asks, "What can this produce?" If you spend the pile shrinks. If you build the machine can produce income for decades. This is why the old rule is powerful. Never cut down the money tree for firewood. A person who receives $5 million and immediately spends $3 million on a house, cars, travel, gifts, and lifestyle upgrades may still look rich. But structurally, that person has reduced the engine that could have bought freedom. A person who invests the $5 million intelligently, protects it, and lives from a sustainable portion of the return has turned sudden wealth into permanent optionality. There is a simple way to think about this. Determine the amount of income you need each year to live the life you want. Then multiply that number by 25. If you need $200,000 a year, the rough capital base is $5 million. That comes from the idea of a 4% withdrawal rate. The point is not that 4% is perfect in every environment. It is not. Inflation, taxes, sequence of returns, asset allocation, and personal circumstances all matter. But as a mental model, it is useful. It forces you to think in terms of cash flow, not status. It forces you to ask whether you are rich enough to live freely or only rich enough to spend dangerously for a while. There is a huge difference. A $5 million portfolio can look enormous to someone who had very little. But if that person tries to live like a person with 50 million, it will disappear. The danger is lifestyle inflation. Every recurring expense becomes a claim on the portfolio. The larger the house, the larger the maintenance, insurance, taxes, furniture, and staff. The more expensive the car, the more expensive the insurance and replacement cycle. The more public the lifestyle, the more pressure to keep performing it. Spending is not just a number. Spending is a system. Once you build a lifestyle, it begins defending itself. That is why the earliest decisions matter so much if you teach yourself to live off the income. The wealth can become durable if you teach yourself to live off the principal. The wealth becomes a melting ice cube. The sixth principle is that ordinary bank interest is usually not enough to preserve real freedom. If you have a large sum of money and put it all in a basic account paying very little, you may feel safe, but safety measured in nominal dollars can be an illusion. Inflation quietly changes the value of money. If your money earns less than inflation, you are losing purchasing power even though the balance on the screen may be unchanged. That does not mean you should take reckless risk. It means you need an investment system that balances growth, income, liquidity, stability, and optionality. At the stage of sudden wealth, preservation usually matters more than aggressive growth. You are no longer trying to win one lucky game. You are trying not to lose the game you have already won. That changes the strategy. You still need exposure to growth because the cost of living rises and money must keep working. Broad stock market exposure can serve as a long-term growth engine. A low Cost Total Stock Market Fund gives you ownership in many companies instead of forcing you to guess which few will dominate. It is not risk. Free markets fall, but over long periods, productive businesses tend to create value when economies grow and innovation continues. You also need stability. High-quality bonds or bond funds can provide income and reduce some volatility. They will not give the same upside as equities. They are not perfect. They can fall when interest rates rise, but in a balanced system, they play a role. Real estate can also play a role if it is bought rationally. Residential property can provide appreciation and inflation linkage. Commercial real estate can provide long-term cash flow if the tenant quality, lease structure, debt, and location make sense. But real estate is not passive simply because people call it passive. It has management, repairs, taxes, leverage cycles, vacancies, and illiquidity. Digital assets, such as Bitcoin or Ethereum, may have a place for some people as a small, highly volatile allocation. The point is not to gamble your freedom on them. The point is that some assets are asymmetric. A small allocation can participate in upside without threatening the entire system if it fails. Cash also has a role. Cash creates flexibility. It prevents forced selling. It allows you to sleep. It gives you the ability to handle emergencies, taxes, opportunities, and market declines. But cash should be held consciously, not because you never built a plan. A person who suddenly becomes wealthy needs to understand that a portfolio is not a collection of exciting ideas. A portfolio is an ecosystem. Each part has a job. Growth assets fight inflation and build long-term wealth. Income assets help fund spending. Stable assets reduce the chance that panic will force bad decisions. Liquid assets buy time. Speculative assets, if used at all, must be small enough not to ruin the system. This is where many people fail. They do not build a portfolio. They build a story. They say, this asset went up, so I will buy more. Or, this person got rich from this, so I should too. Or, I do not want to miss the next big thing. That is not investing, that is emotional contagion. The better approach is to define the goal first. How much income do you need? How much volatility can you tolerate? How much liquidity do you need? How much tax exposure are you creating? What happens if markets fall 30%? What happens if inflation remains high? What happens if your family situation changes? What happens if your health changes? What happens if a business offer comes to you and it looks exciting, but is really a way for someone else to use your capital? The quality of your plan depends on the quality of your questions. The seventh principle is to give yourself a limited amount of joy money, but do not let joy money become a lifestyle machine. I am not someone who believes wealth should be treated like a prison. If you suddenly become rich and you never allow yourself to enjoy any of it, that is also an imbalance. Money should improve life, it should reduce stress, create freedom, improve health, allow time with people you love, and let you choose your work more carefully. So yes, create a fun money bucket, but define it in advance. If you have $5 million, perhaps a portion can be used for experiences, family memories, a nicer home within reason, travel, or the things you truly value. The exact amount depends on the situation. The principle is that enjoyment should be bounded before emotion takes over. A predetermined fun money bucket is very different from an open-ended spending identity. The first gives you permission to enjoy. The second gives your impulses a blank check. That distinction matters. Many people who become rich quickly do not go broke because of one purchase. They go broke because the first purchase changes the baseline. Then every future purchase has to match or exceed it. The first luxury car makes the second seem normal. The first expensive vacation makes the next simple trip feel inadequate. The first large gift makes smaller gifts feel insulting. The first mansion makes the old life feel impossible. That is how wealth disappears. Not in one explosion, but through a series of new normals. Real wealth is not the ability to buy things that impress people who were not paying attention to you before. Real wealth is control over your time. It is waking up and not being forced into a day you hate. It is being able to say no. It is being able to take care of your health. It is being able to walk away from toxic incentives. It is being able to help people from strength rather than from guilt. It is being able to think clearly because survival is not constantly pressing on your chest. If you understand that, your spending will change. You will stop asking what proves I made it. You will start asking what preserves my freedom. Those are very different questions. The final principle is to think beyond yourself once the foundation is secure, but timing matters. Do not start with legacy, start with stability. First protect privacy, then create legal structure, then remove destructive debt, then define boundaries with family and friends, then build the income producing machine, then allow a limited amount of joy, then think about legacy. A person who tries to give before building structure can create chaos. A person who builds structure first can give for decades. That is the difference between emotional generosity and principled generosity. Legacy is not only money left behind, it is the values, systems, and habits you create around money. If your children inherit assets but not principles, they may inherit fragility. If your family receives gifts but never learns boundaries, you may create dependence. If you donate money without understanding the institution receiving it, you may feel virtuous while achieving little. So even generosity needs a system. What do you want the money to do? Who should it help? What behavior should it encourage? What should it not enable? How will the structure continue after your emotions change? These questions sound cold to people who do not understand money, but they are not cold. They are respectful. They respect the size of the responsibility. Sudden wealth is not merely a prize. It is a test of whether you can think in systems instead of impulses. If you fail the test, the money will expose every weakness. If you pass the test, the money can buy something much more valuable than luxury. It can buy time, it can buy privacy, it can buy the ability to choose, it can buy the capacity to help without becoming a hostage. It can buy resilience for the people you love, but only if you treat it correctly from the beginning. So if money arrives suddenly, do not announce it, do not perform it, do not turn it into a public identity, do not assume that because you have more money, you have more wisdom. Do not confuse liquidity with freedom, do not spend the principal, do not become the bank for everyone else's emergencies. Do not quit all meaningful work. Do not build a lifestyle before you build a system. Pause, protect privacy, get serious legal and tax advice, clear destructive debt, create boundaries, convert the pile into a machine, live from the output, not from the engine. Use work to stay grounded, use structure to slow yourself down, use wealth to buy time, not applause, because the real goal is not to look rich for a season, the real goal is to stay free for the rest of your life.